Ah, cool.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm eating a cracker. My supper.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted yet?
Yes.
I think so.
Yep.
Good. Hi, Meg. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well.
If this had been last night, there would have been no power in this house. I had no power for about 6 hours.
Ugh.
We lost internet for a brief moment yesterday, but it came back on pretty quick.
Ours flickered, and then I had my granddaughter who is quarantining here at the house and doing remote for 5 days or 10 days for the next 2 weeks. And she was right in the middle of a Zoom meeting with her teacher, and the whole thing went down.
Oh, gosh. Did it come right
Yep.
back on? Maybe I better
No,
check.
and
That's
not
good.
till 9 o'clock. So, but nothing was lost. It was the end of the day, thank goodness. But it was good. And I have to say, in 14 weeks, life is certainly easier because I did it at the very beginning of school, and I thought, oh man, I can't do this. But everybody is very well versed in technology, and including the kids. And so 2 days in a row, it's been a breeze, which I have to say for Middletown, that was good. I hope we're doing as well.
All right. Well, it's 7 o'clock. Actually, it's 7:01. I see everyone is here. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd all join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Meg Scatta.
There's a second? Laurel? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Approve the consent agenda. I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Lauren? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. Audience of citizens, is there anyone who'd like to address the board?
Pretty so far.
Sorry, Charles? No, not yet?
No one's, not yet. No.
Okay, student rep report. I see Sean. How are you, Sean?
Good, how are you?
Good.
All right, so not much has been happening like in the school since we've been distance learning, but last week we had the sophomore and junior class auctions and they were virtual, and it was a pretty successful night. And the money for that fundraiser will go to our class proms and like class trips in the future. And the new National Honor Society members have been notified. And there's a virtual induction date in the works, but we don't have that date yet. That's all I've got.
Okay, I didn't see that Justin had joined us.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's here tonight.
Okay. We'll move on then to communication and updates and the superintendent's report.
Okay, so I updated your Dropbox with a few communications I just want to see if you have any questions or otherwise make you aware of. So the first one I have for you is we did receive a communication that I think it was probably about a month ago now. I notified you that Portland and pretty much every school district in Connecticut, New Jersey, the tri-state area was caught up in a lawsuit, the JT versus de Blasio lawsuit. We did receive a communication that as of now, that lawsuit has been dismissed. Sounds like it's certainly good news. Who knows what else may come of it, but as of today, the suit is dismissed, and I have not received any indication that it is being refiled or we are being swooped up in any other action. If we are, I'll certainly keep you notified and then would share the details with you in an executive session if we ever got to that point. But this is public information. It was something that was talked about openly with some area superintendents groups that I was with. But it's one thing that's off our plate and certainly something we don't have to worry about any longer for the time being. So I thought that was some good news that I would pass along to you. In addition, we have received 2 notices from faculty who have indicated that they are going to retire at the end of this year. So I look forward to hopefully celebrating with them in person at the end of the year. But Diane Stolting, science teacher at Portland Middle School, has announced that she is going to retire after 23 years. We certainly will wish Diane well. I got to know Diane very well over the past few years. She's wonderful in every way. Again, I look forward to celebrating her career this spring. And hopefully we'll be celebrating it in person as opposed to a Zoom retirement party. But I suppose that is yet to be determined. Although if the vaccines will be here, that is something we will do in person. The second teacher, also from the middle school, want to let you know that Alex Jensen has announced that he is retiring. I loved his letter, and Alex is encouraging us to continue to do the outstanding work that we've been doing and that he has been a part of, so that we can support his grandchildren who are now at Gildersleeve and Valley View. So certainly, Alex, I promise you we will do that and make sure that your grandchildren have as wonderful an education for them as you've provided for many children in your 20 years here in the district. So congratulations to Diane and to Alex. And again, we will look forward to celebrating their careers with them as we head into the spring. Okay, you did receive or CC'd on an email from Kim Nagy Marushak, and I certainly hope I pronounced that correctly, and Scott Marushak. They have asked to opt out of this year's standardized test, the Smarter Balanced Assessment. As you all know, the Smarter Balanced Assessment was canceled last year. It is still on for this year. Yeah, I'm sure that things are still the same as they are now in the March window when we administer this. It will probably be subject to some tweaking in one form or another. But as of now, we are still going to be administering those assessments this spring, but we will certainly honor the request to not participate in those assessments. So you did receive that. You were CC'd on it, and wanted to make sure that I covered that with you. In the same vein of standardized testing, we were this year selected to participate in the NAEP assessment, which is the nation's report card. We received a communication this past week that the NAEP is postponed this year, probably for good reason. It is something that we will participate in next year, but for this year, the NAEP assessment, and that's nationwide, has been postponed, so we are not going to be administering the NAEP assessment this year. Last thing I have for you, just in terms of your communication, I did give you the monthly enrollment report. It's broken down by grade level, by the number of students who are in our PVLA program, and the totals. So all of those things were provided to you in Dropbox, and I'm happy to answer any questions about any of those items.
No.
Anybody have any questions?
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. All right. So let me move on then. I just want to bring you up to speed on reopening, give you a sense of where we are, and kind of prepare you a little bit for our special meeting, which we've scheduled for the 10th of December next week, as we start to make decisions about whether we're ready to reopen the schools and move from remote learning back to in-person learning. So this morning I sat in on a conference call with the Connecticut State Department of Public Health, and this afternoon I sat in on a conference call with the Chatham Health District and Russ Melmet, who you met last week. Unfortunately, the numbers are still not going in the right direction in any part of our state or nation at this point. And anybody who's following the news knows that the infection rates are still on the upward slope of the bad side of the curve that we're on. As of today, and these are subject to be updated, and I suspect they're going to go higher tomorrow. This data is updated every Wednesday. But as of today, Hartford County is at 42 new infections per 100,000. Middlesex County is at 38.7 new infections per 100,000. And the town of Portland is at 29.9 new infections per 100,000. Russ indicated to me today that we are still seeing new infections in the town of Portland, so we can expect, unfortunately, that number is going to go up when the data is updated tomorrow. I'll share the updated data with you in the Friday highlights this Friday. And I'll also report the updated numbers to you when we meet next Wednesday. So since last Thursday, I want to give you an update on how the infections in the community continue to trickle into the school, and they have. So since last Thursday, we were off for 3 days during the Thanksgiving break, but we have had, since the last update, one additional student at Portland High School test positive, one student at Portland Middle School test positive, and one student at Gildersleeve test positive. In addition, we have one faculty member who is a known contact and is showing signs and symptoms of COVID, was in touch today with this individual, still waiting for the test, but we can assume that individual is positive based on the circumstances. Based on contact tracing that we've done for the affected students, we do now have 2 additional teachers in quarantine for 14 days and 1 additional student who is in quarantine for 14 days. So it's still not great. We are still seeing the effects of community transmission rates and the impact of those transmission rates in our school. But I thought I would give you an update on where we stand in terms of the quantitative data. Let me stop there. Any questions about either the infection rates or the effect of the infection rates in terms of the impact on our schools?
Can I ask quickly whether I know that the middle school, that's the one that was reported to the community over the weekend, correct? The one case at the middle school. So the case at the high school and at Gildersleeve, are those related? Do you know through contact tracing, are those related to infections that we've already been informed about in our schools, or were these infections that happened elsewhere?
No. Yeah, these are different than ones that were reported previously. I think that's what you're asking.
I'm asking if the infections, do we know through contact tracing whether this was student to student transmission at school or whether this happened elsewhere in the community?
Yeah, community right now. We suspect that all of them were community transmissions with the exception of the teacher. We're concerned that the teacher who is showing signs and symptoms was a contact of one of the in-school cases that we had before we met last.
Okay.
So that's the only one that may, if the test comes back positive, indicate that we had a transmission within the school.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, that's always very difficult to determine, but through a sort of a process of deductive logic, that's what the signs point towards.
Any other questions?
Okay, so let me keep. Yeah.
Oh.
All right, so let me keep moving on. I'll give you a sense of where we are as of today. So today was our first day of remote learning. As you know, and you probably know many of them, many of our teachers are also residents of Portland, and they are affected by the school closures because their children who are in the Portland Public Schools are now home with them, right? So some of our teachers who are residents and have children in the schools are now impacted by childcare needs because their children aren't in school in person. This is also true of teachers who live in other towns and the schools in those towns have gone remote. So as of today, what we've said is that non-certified and certified faculty and staff are expected to report to their currently assigned building locations. So as of today, teachers have and administrators and nurses and everybody have been coming in, right? We've been having people come to work and teach remotely from our schools. However, I have had a number of certified and non-certified faculty reach out to me and say, now I'm in a bit of a pickle, Charles, because my children are home and my children are young enough that they need care. So I did set up a process where teachers could ask for permission to work remotely during the 2-week period while they're concurrently responsible for taking care of their children because the schools are closed and their children aren't in school.
Sense.
Everybody following the dots on that
Yep.
one?
Yep.
Makes sense.
So
Yep.
as of today, I have granted permission for 3 of our paraprofessionals, 1 of our secretaries, 9 teachers, and 2 nurses to work remotely during the 2-week period of remote learning that we've committed to so that they are available to take care of their children. Now, we'll see how that plays out if we come back to school, and certainly they live in town and their children go to school, they are then able to come back and teach in person because their kids will be in school. However, if teachers are residing in another district and those districts are remote, if and when we come back fully, that's something that we're going to have to be creative and work with those teachers because I do think we owe it to our faculty and staff to support them and understand that these are circumstances outside of their control. So I am prepared to do that. We are going to certainly make some exceptions and support our certified and non-certified faculty and staff if school closures either here in Portland or in other districts where they reside are remote and they're confronted with childcare needs. That was a lot. Let me stop and see if there are any questions on that.
Oh, but I support that. And I think that as long as everybody's remote and the teacher's remote, it's okay. As long as they can share their screens and do what they have to do, I think that's an okay thing. I would support that.
And look, everybody who had to do it last spring and is doing it now knows that teaching remotely while your children are home, especially if they're young, can be disruptive. You know, I lived it. I know personally. But you know, our teachers are doing their best to hopefully have their children engaged in their schoolwork while they're servicing our students too. So we're making the best of a very difficult set of circumstances.
Charles, is that like
So this is
a standard thing that other school systems are doing as well? I mean, it seems like it would be, right? Is that something you've talked about at your superintendent groups?
Absolutely. And I'll just remind everybody that as part of the coronavirus relief legislation, the CCFRP, everybody would be eligible for 80 hours of paid time if they have to quarantine or they have to take care of children because of COVID-related measures, right? So this is something that you know, not that I ever would, because I don't think it would be fair and I wouldn't be comfortable with it. If we played hardball, it would be an expectation that teachers could say that, hey, I'm entitled to these 80 hours. And then if they took advantage of the 80 hours, we wouldn't be in a position where we could say, you can also teach your classes because they would be availing themselves of the 80 hours of paid time and they don't have to, you know, be responsible for teaching their classes. Now, our teachers are very committed individuals and they want to teach their classes and are, I think, doing an excellent job managing the needs of their own children in the home while still supporting our students and teaching their classes. So it's working out. It's definitely a challenge. And I think if you spoke to many of these teachers, they would tell you exactly how challenging that is. But I think they're doing a great job, and I'm proud of us for standing by them. I think it's the right thing to do.
I don't disagree. I'm just curious as to whether that's something that we've been provided any relief, financial relief through that legislation as well to help pay for those 80 hours.
Not specifically to pay for those 80 hours, but watch this space. I think we're about to get some very good news for you, but I don't want to steal the thunder. I'll let Stephanie share that good news with you when we get to the financial update. So specifically to cover that time, no, but hold that thought, and let's wait for Stephanie's report. I want her to share the good news with you.
Okay,
I would just comment that Middletown has kids that are still going to school, even though they've got kids who are quarantining and teachers who are remotely teaching because they are also quarantined. And it's pretty smooth, except that we're lucky that everybody's at home learning and not having to have substitutes sitting with kids, different cohorts coming into school on different days. So I think, 100% remote with remote teachers it's going to work. It'll be fine. And I think it's a positive for everybody.
And I will tell you from all observations and feedback I'm getting I met with the building reps yesterday. I had a very nice conversation, goal setting conference with the teachers today. I've spoken with all of our principals since yesterday. The remote learning, it's only day 2, but it's going really well. I think generally speaking, you are seeing a dramatic improvement over where we were last spring, which is a function of the planning we've done. But it's going well. It is working. There are no lack of wrinkles to work out, including yesterday's windstorm that knocked out internet for a little while, which is problematic. But it was only down for a short time, and we were able to get back on. But it's going well. And again, none of this is perfect, but I would say we're doing the very best that we can under some challenging circumstances.
Charles, in terms of we'll be talking about, reopening for the next special meeting, but I know one of the reasons that, you felt strongly we needed to take the pause was that there were so many people between students and classrooms that were quarantined and staff that were quarantined and whatnot. Are you able to, kind of like track that, or are you doing that over this period to figure out when we get for our next meeting? Where we are, like in terms of people that have to quarantine, that how close to back to full staff and full classrooms will we be?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to talk to you next. Thank you. That's a perfect segue.
You're welcome.
So we are meeting a week from Thursday. We're meeting on December 10th, and at that time, I will be prepared to make another recommendation to you, and the recommendation is going to be, without predisposing it, either some form of remain in remote, return in hybrid, return in full in person, or some combination thereof, right? So in preparation for that meeting, I have a lot of conversations that are ongoing and underway, including the reopening committee. I've met with the building reps. I'm meeting with the administrators tomorrow. We're having lots of conversations. What happened to us, and I want to be clear about this, is we're not remote now because the schools are any more or less safe than they were 3 weeks ago, right? I mean, there's a level of risk opening schools in a pandemic in general. We all understand that, but also the mitigation strategies, and we're hearing this consistently from the health department and the medical professionals, that as long as we follow the mitigation strategies, we're not seeing massive amounts of outbreaks or spread in schools, right? So we haven't closed the schools because we had a huge outbreak where 15 students were infected by another student and it got everybody sick. That's not what happened. The reason why we moved to this is because of the direct effect of the contact tracing on our ability to staff the buildings, right? We had large numbers of teachers and students who were subject to the 14-day quarantine period because of the positive cases that came into the building and the contact tracers that did their work and said, this large group of people were in that 6 feet for more than 15 minutes and are now subject to a 14-day quarantine period, right? So that's the challenge we have to work. That's the needle we have to thread is what do we have to do to increase social distancing or tighten up on cohorting so that if we have one positive student enter the building, the contact tracing process that follows that one positive case doesn't shut down an entire grade level because that one student interacted with 5 teachers and those 5 teachers are in quarantine.
Right.
So that's the work we have to do now. And that's the conversation that I've already started with the building reps, with the teachers, and tomorrow with the administrators. How can we tighten this up even further so that if and when we had a positive case enter our building, we can be confident that that positive case isn't spreading the virus to many, many other students, but how can we tighten up so that that one positive case doesn't mean 120 students and 15 teachers, and that's a little dramatic, but a large number of faculty, staff, and students are now home for 2 weeks, because when that happens, there just aren't enough subs and people
Right.
for us to fill in those classrooms to keep things going. So that's the work we have ahead of us. If we can come up with that, if we can thread that needle and tighten up our cohorting, increase our social distancing, and create the conditions where if contact tracers did their work, fewer numbers of individuals would be subject to that period of isolation.
I think I heard
don't have any-
yesterday there was a talk about shortening the quarantine time. Is there work on that in Connecticut? Have you talked about that? Because I think it was actually the governor when he was speaking said something about it.
Right on, right? Boy, you're good. So that was the topic of conversation at the DPH discussion that we were in tomorrow. And I was in this morning.
Oh.
There is now, we expect, going to be a revised CDC guideline that reduces the 14-day period. I'm hearing, and this is just hearsay right now, that I think what we're going to see out of the CDC is they're going to reduce the quarantine period from 14 days to 7 days with a negative test. So if that happens, that'll be a huge step in the direction of not absorbing a massive impact of contact tracing and quarantines.
Right.
But that's not
That
out
would
there
be
yet.
good.
That was just talked
No.
about today.
Yeah, that's all it was. The letter was just like, maybe if you could get all the stars to align.
Correct. So a couple other things I just want to throw out there as part of the reopening update. We did stand up a emergency childcare at Gildersleeve. We have anywhere from 20 to 24 students, depending on the day. That is, and I can't thank the YMCA enough. They were really quick, like 2 days quick, in terms of getting our families registered and helping out. I am very much out there asking for donations from the community to donate to the YMCA. Many of our families in that emergency daycare program still have to pay for it, but there is a sliding scale with the YMCA, so there is some prorated tuition, but even that is a challenge for some of our families, particularly as we're in the holiday season. I made a donation today, and I'm now out asking if anybody who hears the sound of my voices is interested in making a charitable donation to help out some of our families who really need this care so they can continue to work. Reach out to the Middlesex YMCA or get in touch with me, and I'll let you know who you can communicate to. But we are looking for donations to help support our families in need who are participating in that emergency child care program.
Charles, is that, or is
Dawn,
is the district subsidizing that for some people as well? I had that impression from something I read, I think in one of your announcements.
so the district, our budget is not subsidizing that. The Portland Public Schools budget absolutely is not contributing any funding to that. All of the subsidizing that we're doing is being done through charitable contributions.
Well, that's great. We have to all get that word out, because that's great to hear that there's so much support out there for that.
And the charitable contributions are going directly to the Y, correct?
Yeah,
Not,
to the Y. Yeah.
Directly to the Y. Yep. And I
And-
have a commitment from the Y that anybody who makes that charitable donation on behalf of Portland, those funds will be used to support Portland families.
Oh,
Good.
that's fantastic.
Thank you.
that's good.
You're welcome, of course. All right, two quick other ones then. You'll hear from Dawn tonight. Dawn's going to give you an update on some of the other work that we've done with our mental health team to identify families who need support during these very challenging times. And a survey we administered, and now the work we're doing to provide all kinds of assistance to families who are struggling, and many families are. You know, I would remind everybody that a lot of the federal support has dried up or is drying up. You know, I heard tonight that there is talk about a second round of relief funding coming out of Washington. You know, I pray that happens. But in the short term here, we do have lots of families that need our support. So we did do some work in that area. Dawn is going to brief you on that during her report, and also talk to you a little bit tonight about, even though we're remote learning, we still have a number of students who are coming to school in person, right? Many of our support services are still being provided to our students. We found clearly last spring that certain support services are just not effective in this Google Meet, Zoom-based environment. So we do have a number of students who are still taking the bus and coming to school every day to receive those services. And I look forward to Dawn updating you on that tonight. And I can't say enough about Dawn and the work of our special education teachers, our speech and language people, our school social workers, psychologists. They've, you know, just stepped up in remarkable ways to help get us through this. It's really impressive what I see happening. So I won't steal Dawn's thunder on that. I do want her to brief you on it, but great work is happening. I'm really proud of people. Let's see. So yeah, I think that's everything. Just a couple of quick ones just to let you know that I did get an email tonight from Chris. Yes, we are still providing the free school lunches. They're available for pickup at the high school for any students who are under 18. If people need those delivered, they can call the high school and we can arrange that too. And we're trying to set up a satellite location in town too, but that is underway. As you know, also athletics is postponed till January 19th. Hopefully we may have some form of a winter sports season, but well, we'll have to wait and see on that. I'm not prepared to make any recommendations on it. And then the last thing, just I got some good news yesterday, and I followed up today with the Department of Public Health to question it. We were asked for a head count, right? We were asked for a head count of the number of Board of Education employees and municipal employees. And we were asked for that in the context of a vaccine distribution plan that the Department of Public Health is putting together. So our local Chatham Health District and the Department of Public Health and all of the local districts are identifying different tiers of employees. Certainly essential employees like educators would be further towards the front of the line. So they're trying to get a sense of how much vaccine could be, should be requested by the state of Connecticut. And then of course, some of you may or may not be aware that actually Portland High School here is one of the location centers that the community response teams would use to begin a vaccination program for our region. So things are happening. We are all hearing in the news about the emergency approvals for the Pfizer and the Moderna, I think it is, and the other pharmaceutical companies. But I did get an email today that signaled to me that things are happening quickly, and it could be as soon as mid to late December that we see the first round of vaccinations starting. And certainly, I imagine those will be prioritized for our medical folks, but shortly thereafter in line, educators and other people who are essential employees would follow. So things are underway. The light at the end of the tunnel is here, but to get there, we still have a bit of a dark tunnel to get through.
Hey, Charles, have you thought about surveying everyone to see if everyone's on board with getting the vaccine? If we have anybody that's going to refuse to get it, either faculty or students?
Yeah, again, that was another fascinating topic of discussion today that the DPH had, and specifically, it was asked of DPH. I wish Russ was on the phone because he could talk to you about this line too. Maybe I could ask him to join us next week. But the question was asked directly, what ability do we have to require people who want to return to school in person to get vaccinated? That is something that is beyond, I think, the prerogative and purview of us at the local level. That is something that would have to be legislated and given to us as a directive from certainly folks that are in state legislature or the executive office. And I heard a long conversation today about there's a federal body, the Advisory Commission on Vaccines or something, ACBID or some new alphabet soup agency that does that work and puts forward recommendations for what vaccines should be required and what vaccines should be strongly recommended. So stay tuned on that. I don't have any answers to it, but that conversation is definitely happening.
Right.
Thank you. I think that's everything.
Okay, next is business and financial affairs. I know I saw Stephanie on here. Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you?
Good.
So you got a bunch of documents from me. First, if you could look at the authorized spending report, it's the document that I've been giving every time when I don't do the normal quarterly report, just to show you where we're at. I ran a comparative report as to this same time last year, and if you look at the bottom number on this current year, we have 54.18% of our budget remaining. And at this time last year, we had 52.11%. So that means a few things. That means our freeze has been working. And this document also still includes, I didn't move the money yet that we received for the Corona relief. I did the 7382 for the CARES Act. I have not moved the Corona relief yet because that goes into part 2 of what I'm going to tell you about. So the freeze has been working, and we're into December now. So it's looking okay. We're hoping that maybe come end of January, February, we can take a look at everything and see if we can try and do a small, slow unfreeze for, needed supplies, for the schools. You have to remember during the freeze per se, we still have to run all of student services. We still have our full transportation. We still have all our facility stuff that has to be done. So those are our costs that we are incurring. But we've been holding our ground with the freeze, and it's been showing. So if anybody, oh no, are you there?
We're here. We can hear you still.
You hear me? Okay.
Yes.
You went away on my screen. So I'm going to stop for a minute there. If anybody's got any questions on the authorized spending report or any accounts, that I can answer.
I think it looks great. Thank you.
So
I
then,
agree.
I would go to the second document, which you've again also seen before, but it looks a little different this time.
It does. It looks nice.
I took all the colors out, but I left a nice yellow highlight there to show that we did get some new funding. When I put in for the $100,000, the state allowed us to, at the time, put in for actual expenses. Even though we only at the time had $100,000, they were giving districts the opportunity, if you were going to exceed the $100,000, put it in to the grant. And if other districts don't need all of their money, they would then redistribute it to the districts in need. So I got a very exciting email last Friday that made my weekend very nice. And we got an additional, on top of the $100,000, an additional $126,136 to help us
Wow.
cover our COVID costs. And we probably would have gotten more, but you can only use it through December
Wow.
31st. So I was only able to put in our expenses through December 31st.
Wow, that's great.
Well, congratulations.
Did they just notify towns of that and tell you to, to apply?
We can hear you, unfortunately.
Does anybody have any questions on that?
You guys didn't hear Stephanie's Yahoo from across town. That was a good email.
I think I heard something like
Very
that.
good
I
email.
couldn't figure out what it was, but now I know. Congratulations. Good work, Steph.
Yeah, excellent, excellent.
Thank you. So, we still have, a few other things to cover, but we're headed in the right direction. And that's so I'm hoping by then, when I do the next quarterly update, I'll have moved all the expenses out, because I wanted to wait for December 31st to end so I could move, because it's going to cover a lot of our payroll. And that's what Charles was talking about when he was talking about the salaries piece of it. So this will help cover a lot of those extra substitute costs, our PVLA, a lot of the costs that we were unsure of how we could cover. So it's a huge help
Yeah.
and a win
Huge.
for us.
Never hurts to ask.
Well, that's the thing. I said I'm going to put in for it. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
I can't believe districts actually gave up money, but I guess I'll have to-
That's amazing. They did, yeah.
So I see that there's another financial issue down under new business. Is there any objection to having Stephanie address the fourth quarter transfers before we move to Dawn, so that we can do that all at one time?
No. We could do the transfer.
Do you want me to just go over that quick?
Sure.
So these are our typical budget transfers that we do to make from last fiscal year, to make each location not negative. Listening to what Tim had said previously, I worded it a little bit differently so that it kind of went along with what was recommended. It's hard because I would like to do transfers throughout the year, but there's so many moving targets with it. This really is the best way to do it. But I saw where it was a little confusing, where it stated, in per the board policy. So I changed the wording on it, and hopefully that makes things a little bit clearer and makes it more suitable. But really it's just moving throughout the different accounts to make our locations whole for the auditors. Any questions on those?
No, I really like this format though. This is great.
I do as well. It has evolved over the last many years, and it's gotten now to where it's very clear and it's very transparent in what we did. And with the reports we've been getting each quarter, it matches up with this. And that's really what, as a board member, I like to see, where it all falls in line.
And there are some boards that do this every month. I mean, they do transfers every single month. That puts an awful lot of strain on the financial person to be doing and moving. And it's never, This is a final count, so there's no more transfers after this. The budget for the past year is closed, and this just evens out all the accounts at this point. So I like this better. I like to do it at the end.
There a
And I
motion?
honestly had
Well,
intentions of doing it a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
but with COVID, it kind of threw me off.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, we always do it. I mean, it's traditionally been in December that we finally get to it. That was, you know, and I still think as a matter of practice, we would be better making some. And I believe we did make some transfers throughout the year, didn't we? Or no? That were
We did
absolutely
the
not.
Chromebooks, which you'll see here.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we did some.
If they're large purchases or something, you know, that
Yeah.
would it exceeds a certain amount, obviously we would come to you.
Right, but that's all the
first.
policy says. The policy
Right.
only talks about larger numbers between
Right.
line items, not
Right.
every little, you know, 200 or, you know, $2,000 thing that you transfer. You're not going to all vote on that.
Right.
No, this is a big improvement. I appreciate your effort. I would have liked if we had talked. I know we had made a commitment last year actually to talk about it throughout the year, and I think we
know.
followed up once or twice and never really got the full conversation. But I appreciate that you kept it in mind.
And I did take out the wording that said per board policy because I know that
Yes.
it technically doesn't say that in there. So I kind of worded it the same way that we do the other transfers, just to kind of make it consistent.
No, I think at least now it's, you know, because it is close to consistent with board policy, and it's good to see. Thank you.
I can't remember if you have to vote on it or not, though.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
We do. We have to make
vote
a
on that,
motion.
yeah.
I suggest Tim, go ahead, make the motion. Read the motion. Your honors. Go for it.
Is there a motion in the minutes that
There
is.
is.
is it
There
stated? I have
was.
to open the minutes. Hold on, I've got them here.
Under new business, A1. I think that's the wording you need. Is that right, Sharon?
Oh, it's in Dropbox.
Yeah, it's in Dropbox.
Yes.
We're not in that area. Oh, new business. I'm sorry. There it is. Task
Budget
for
transfers,
fourth quarter detail, and I see the report there, but I don't see language.
I
You don't
think
see the to recommend?
A1.
Yeah, to recommend to, okay, here we go. Ready? We'll act like this is fresh. Oh, here's the motion to recommend to the full board
Go for it.
the FY 2020 fourth quarter budget transfers between the major objects listed below. Do I need to list these?
You can just say as presented.
As presented in the 5-digit codes in
Report from Stephanie.
in the report from Stephanie.
There's a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Meg, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
I thought you should have the honors tonight.
Okay, so we'll move back up. I think, Stephanie, that was the last item we had for you to report on this evening. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you again. We'll go back up to Director of Student Services. Is Dawn? Oh, I see Dawn. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We sure
Yes.
can.
Okay, great. So I have some really fun stuff to share with everybody tonight. Our department's been incredibly busy since we elected to go to a distance learning period of time. One of the things that we did promise was that we were going to work to build an opportunity for students that were not successful in the distance learning plan, especially students that had special needs that were requiring specialized instruction or access to related services. We would develop a way to invite those students to come into district for that support. So we got really busy right after you guys met last week or a week ago to elect to go into this closure model. We have opened yesterday. We have 57 students that are coming in and participating in person across all 5 schools. This goes from little preschoolers at the age of 3 all the way up to some of our students that are receiving transition services. So from 3 to 21. We also had another 18 that were officially offered, but the parents declined. So that, that's, the number could be higher, but many of the families, 18 that I have record of, that declined right off the bat and said, you know what, we're going to keep our child home for right now. If it continues or if things change in a couple weeks, we may come back. So it's a good amount. There's a couple people I want to thank, some of our behind the scenes folks that worked really hard over Thanksgiving weekend. By the time we all left on Wednesday morning to go celebrate Thanksgiving, we had recommended all the students that were coming in, and we had the parent contact information, but our key group of transportation organizers, this is Nancy Bakos, who's in my office, Nancy Bordenero, who works for M&J, and then Hope Larson and Linda Martin worked together online over the weekend just to get all the transportation set up so buses ran Monday morning, and we started bringing students in. So it's really exciting to know that we're still able to meet some of these IEP goals and be able to address some of those things like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, small group instruction, Wilson reading, all of those things are going on. So it's a very fluid model. So as we're readjusting to distance learning, if a student is going to be struggling and their principal and their case manager would recommend them to come in, we can just add those students to the grouping. And it's not just our students that have special education needs. We have some students without IEPs that are coming in and getting some services. Some students are coming in just to meet with their clinician to get some mental health support and things like that. So it's a fluid model, and everybody's committed to making sure it stays fluid and it stays working for all of our students and our staff. And the staff is delighted. That was probably one of the biggest heartbreaks for our children with special needs, especially the ones we knew that were not thriving at home last spring. As you know, the teachers would ask us, can't we just bring them in? Can I go to their house and tutor them? Can I meet them at the library? Please, please, please let us be able to do that. So it's exciting to be able to do that right now, whatever the next couple of weeks bring, and this pandemic journey that we're on. It's exciting that we have that opportunity. The next thing I want to talk about, is there any questions about that before I go on though? Let me just make sure everybody else set.
I have a quick question. Some of these students are coming in for full days of learning and others are just coming in for shorter periods of time. Is that accurate?
We don't have anybody that's coming in like a straight 8 to 2 type of thing. We do have some kids that are coming in for the whole morning. We have some kids that are coming in for a small group period of time. And then we have others that are only just coming in a couple days a week based upon what their needs are. And then the rest of the time they are home and they're able to sign on online and do tie in with their typical peers in their classroom work. So it really is, it's dependent upon the student. We did note that, you know, for a child to come in and be full-time in a special ed self-contained program, that's a lot of hours and it deprives them of access to their typical peers in a lot of ways. So nobody's coming in full day, but we do, like I know at Brownstone, they have some morning sessions and afternoon sessions, and the transportation plan looks like a Tetris game. Things are going in all different directions to make sure people get to where they have to go. One of the principals asked me today, she says, can we move everything by 15 minutes for tomorrow? And I just had to hold my breath for a minute. I'm like, I think so. Let's try it. And our transportation people got on it right away. So, but it's very highly individualized, just like their programming is when we're in school full session. Great. Any other questions about the academic and social emotional support that way? Great. I want to talk next then about the mental health team. And, you know, just like when we shut down in March and the emergency shutdown, the mental health team this time around got right on work. We met right away, and they were abuzz with ideas and ways to help, especially meet the needs of families. We knew going into this was going to create a crisis for a lot of families. And if not a true crisis, at least social emotional undoing that nobody needs right now. So we created a survey right away that went out to families. I think it went out the day after our last board meeting, and we've been collecting the data on that. And it just asked some real basic questions. It's kept very confidential. The only people that see the survey results are the people on the mental health team, and they break all of the families' responses down based upon what person is servicing that family or what school that family is connected to. And the first question was about childcare. As you, I'm sure you've heard Dr. Britton, that has been his biggest concern shutting down, is we need to make sure we have good quality childcare for our students that for whose families have to go to work. So that was the first question. And then after that, we asked questions like, are there, are there mental health needs? Are there access to services? Is there financial needs? Are there things that we can help connect you with the right people? And taking that information, we have a database now that the team is going through and reviewing information and then making those connections. The first thing we did was we peeled away the childcare information, and that was what led Dr. Britton to be able to contact the Y and go through what numbers they had, and then the numbers of families that could be served and what their needs were. And then the next thing, now we're looking at things more around the holidays. Do families have enough food? Do they have access to heat? If they don't, do they know how to get access to funding to help with keeping their house warm? Or are they connected with the food pantry and Ruth Mayo's work to be able to get groceries and get on the gift donor list and things like that? So we've got quite a network set up, and it's just beautiful. Our mental health team, if you've gotten to know any of the people on the team, people like Kate Bohan and Cheryl McDonough, these are our social workers based in each of the schools, Meg Bailey and Sam Star. They're just doing this phenomenal job of just pulling things together and having that information. So we have at our fingertips the ability now to take that information and connect either programs or donors or resources to some families in ways. And these are things that I think would be going on a looser scale in every school, as our social workers and our clinicians have opportunity to work with families through the holidays. But the fact that we're closed takes away some of that ability to network, to pull together materials, do a toy drive and things like that. And we know across the community those things have been really thwarted over the last several months, because all those great things that we do throughout the year to raise money for toys or to do toy drives or food drives, a lot of those are not been able to take place. So that is, in a nutshell, it's a very living, vibrant organism right now, and we're being able to connect people where they need to be. So those are the two things tying in with our shutdown right now. Any questions in that area? All
I have
right.
a question about what the rate of response was on that survey.
It was small. I think we had about 100. Last I checked, it was 140 surveys.
So do you know if there will be any effort to kind of have a continued outreach to families who might not have responded the first go around, who might still have ongoing needs?
Laurel, that's a great question. And that was part of our discussion this afternoon with the team, is families that we know that are struggling, and especially our social workers and our building principals, because they work so closely with the families. If the family didn't, and this is not this survey, we know what the family's name was when they responded. So we're going to be reaching out to families that we suspect may need some help or may be struggling, but didn't complete the survey. You're right. Just to see what, to connect. That's the beauty of having a social worker committed to each building or a clinician committed to each building, is we have that person that knows the families and can connect with them.
Great. Thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome. And I have to tell you, not is all gloom and doom. I mean, we had many families that perhaps just needed to say, yeah, I could use some childcare because, we don't have access to childcare right now because of the shutdown, but everything else is fine. And then we even got comments from those same families saying, if we can contribute, please tell us how we can help. So it was a very positive thing across many avenues. I want to share a little statistical data with you about student services, just to give you an update. We've been so busy doing other things like shutdowns and the pandemic, that simple things like just giving you an update of numbers in the district. We are at right now 209 students identified across the 12 grades with individual education plans, identified as special ed students. in addition to that 209, we have 26 students that are pending. These are students that are under review that possibly could qualify for special education. And out of those 26, this is a number that's going to keep me up a little bit at night. 10 of those are in preschool. So if all 10 of those students in preschool qualify, and they typically come to us in preschool through birth to 3, so it's not a, it's not a lightly made referral. That's a large group of students to become qualified for special education and require programming. So I just want those numbers to be in your head. In addition, we have 86 students with 504 plans. Those are, Americans with Disability Act protection. And we have 48 students that are EL learners. And out of those 48, we have a handful of students that are still newcomers and very, very early in their English learning. So that's been a very creative world to go. As you know, our EL teacher is going on a maternity leave at the end of this month, and we're working hard to find a replacement for her for the spring months while she stays home with her child. There's not a lot of applicants out there. We're holding interviews and hope to have that position filled soon, but that's going to be big shoes to fill for the next 6 months. And then the last thing I just want to share with you, and I apologize I didn't send this out, but I will get it out to you through Meg tomorrow. The annual performance report was published. That's published every fall for every district, and that includes our numbers, our identification numbers, and making sure that we're in compliance of all areas such as participation, record keeping, early childhood, dropout rates, and all of that. I've shared it with you every fall. These are they're very much in arrears. So this report is for the 18-19 school year, but we still met all requirements based upon IDEA requirements. And during that year, we were actually under an audit. That was the year that every 3 years you go through a desk audit. And so we were under audit that year, and we met all requirements. Our prevalence rate was 11.4%. That means 11.4% of our population in K-12 was identified as having a special education need. That's several points below the state prevalence, which is 15%. But I'll get a copy out to you so you can peruse this. We've looked at it together as a group, but it's good to take a look at it. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me during the next month, or I can answer any questions that you might have as a group at the next board meeting when I present, which would be sometime in January, as we're tiptoeing around the budget.
Dawn, I have a couple of questions about the numbers that you gave us. The 26 that are review, 10 you said were preschool students. Do we have any known information about their needs at this point coming into preschool? Are they autistic, or have we been able to define what those needs are? And I guess the question is, do we see the need for an additional classroom, or are we going to be burgeoning with 2 classrooms full of kids at this point? Can you predict that at all?
I think we're good. Right now, our numbers are a little light in preschool, and light enough that we have Ellen Kelly, one of our preschool teachers, is actually teaching one of her sections for the PVLA.
Okay.
But so we'll be able to pull her back, and that's something that we've been talking about. Eric and I have been discussing to have. Of course, it's the most important place is to have her in the classroom with opening up that other section.
Right.
So depending on how long, she's, we may have to make other plans for PVLA and go ahead and pull her back into the classroom. We have a skeletal idea of the needs of our students through the birth to 3 process. We do learn about the students many months in advance. That's why we know about some of these students coming in. But how they present at home, especially during this area of COVID shutdown, could look a lot different than how they present in school.
Right.
We do have a very low participation rate in person for typical peers right now for preschool. There's not a lot that are coming in. Most families opted out of coming in, and for virtual learning, we're only providing special education support. we're not
Right.
providing a PVLA for typical peers. So it's manageable, but it may require additional adult support, and it may
Right.
require some different configurations of as far as how we support students in that setting. But at this point, there's no talk of having to go to an additional section other than having Ellen teach both sessions in person. And we anticipate that shift
Okay.
is probably going to come into place in December, moving into January.
And do we know that these kids are coming in? Are they are they all arriving at once, or are they spaced out over the next couple of months? I know when they turn 3, they're immediately registered in a public school setting. So
Mhm.
are we looking at 10 children who are going to show up on January 3rd?
No, my hair's not going gray
Okay.
that fast, but it's
Good.
coming, but they're not going to happen all at once. They are spread
Okay.
out.
They
Yeah.
are spread out. Okay, great.
Unlike
All right.
our other children that are not in birth to 3, our regular children, we have 45 days to go through that process to
Right.
evaluate them and determine eligibility. These are children who are spaced out by their birth dates.
By their birth dates. That's what I thought. All right. Thank you. Thanks.
welcome.
Dawn, can I ask you a question about the ELL students? I'm trying to jog my memory back to when we approved the hiring of the new ELL teacher. So she's a 0.5, correct?
She's a 0.5. Yep.
And and again, it was months ago, I could have sworn the number then was in the 30s in terms of number of students. At 48 students, do we have concern over needing to increase the ELL position to more of a full-time level to service all of those kids?
You'll be hearing more about that in my budget projections and my budget requests. When you folks approved hiring, because it was an unbudgeted expense,
Right.
you approved the 0.5. We were at 42 at that point.
We were, okay.
We started this school year with 47. We just added the 48th just last week. So it's always moving. One of the bigger struggles for us in addition is the fact that many of our EL students are also in the virtual learning academy. Their families are opting out of in-person learning. It's a statistical, I don't want to say nightmare because it's getting done, but we have appropriated one of our special ed paras spends her time, the whole time that our 0.5 teacher is working, because remember, she's working from home. The para is getting students to the computers, because some of these are very young learners, getting them to the computer so they're set up to work with their teacher. She's supporting the in-person needs of these young students while our English learning specialist is doing the English instruction over the computer. She's also working closely with the families that are at home that are helping the families get logged on and things like that. Denise Goldblum is the para doing it. She's doing a beautiful job, and she's one of our open choice liaisons. She's bilingual. She does a lot of work with our Spanish families. It's a great situation. But she's been pulled away from special ed right now, and she's doing this for 0.5 of the time.
Thank you. And then my other question, and again, like I feel like I can't necessarily remember all the details, but wasn't there a certain number where if a certain number of children all speak the same first language, that there has to be like a bilingual class? Are we close to that threshold at all?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. Yeah, I watched that carefully.
Okay.
Okay. Good
I
question.
have a question just about the resources available to families. I know that the kids are coming in not speaking English, but are we kind of looking for resources in the community? I know there used to be tutors and things for people who wanted to learn English. I don't even know if that's available anymore, but do we provide any resources for people so the parents can also learn at the same time? A lot of time families don't speak the language, and the kids are the ones who are, then navigating the new world, so to speak.
Yeah, Meg, that's definitely not under the purview of our EL teacher,
It's not.
especially at a
Okay.
0.5. All of her resources are going in
Right.
that direction. We
Okay.
do work to connect people with, adult ed over in Middletown and things like that for families that want to,
Right.
when there's adults that are trying to learn the language as well.
Right.
But
Okay.
in
I
addition,
just
we
wondered if anything.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to do that under this purview with the
Right.
0.5. A little spoiler alert. I mean, I am recommending we go to a 1.0 for next year for, and that will be in my budget request. But the reality though is that the kids that, especially given this shutdown and all the learning loss that has taken place, for some of these students, the idea is that they need to make sure that they're getting the supports that they need, not just half of the time.
Just
Um,
Yep.
the other piece is we make sure that for all PPT meetings and even for parent teacher conferences, we set up translators to make sure that not just our Spanish speaking families, but our other families that are speaking other languages, we get a certified translator in for PPT meetings. And then we do the best that we can with other like parent meetings and like that.
I was just going to ask, are there translators for parent-teacher conferences?
Yes, we can set them up if families do want them. We work with the translation. Spanish is easy because we have enough Spanish speaking individuals in the school. Maritza at the middle school and Denitza at Valley View both do a beautiful job, as well as a few other key staff members. But when we're doing something like PPTs or things like that, where it's a legal meeting in that manner, we do work with the translation company because we just don't, we don't have those resources available to us. So we use a translator.
So are you saying though that the parents have to actually request a translator? It's not a given for, a family where the parents may speak almost no English?
Now, what happens at that point is that discussion is held ahead of time with
Okay.
the family to see if they would want them. We're not going to impose a translator on somebody if they don't want them. So
Okay.
it's something that's discussed ahead of time.
Okay.
So if the parent agrees that they would want. Sometimes we really tie that in. If it's a student with special needs, we'll tie it into the PPT meeting as well. Just, we do have students that speak some languages that it's really difficult to get translators for.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
This is making me wonder about how we're doing with translation of important emails that are going home to these families, especially as we're in and out of school and changing our mode and things are kind of, moving quickly. How are we doing with translations of important information?
For some of them, we're just not getting them translated just yet. It's something we're working to build our capacity for. Some of it's done through Google Translate. It's not the most professional translation, but we are attempting to get things out in other languages. For some of our families that are their language needs, it may be that there's a family member that can translate for them, or there can be, a neighbor or something like that. We've had situations in those manners, but it's an area that we still need to improve upon.
Yeah, and I know there'll be more information about this when we start talking about budget needs and potentially increasing this position, but are these things that you think would improve by increasing from a 0.5 position for our EL teacher?
They would, because there's a lot of administrative and professional meeting work that the EL teacher is not able to take part in. For example, we had a PPT the other day, and the student is also not only a special ed student requiring an IEP, but also is an EL student learning English as a second language. And we have no opportunity to have the EL teacher involved other than through an email or something, because her hours are limited, and in her schedule, she's lockstep working with students.
Yeah.
So there's reasons, and I'm doing a lot of the paperwork. We're coming into the Lost Links season that starts right after the turn of the new year. And when Charlene began with us last year, she joined us right at the beginning of that season. And the first 3 months she spent with us were spent just administering the Lost Links, which is a required administration of a English language proficiency test that has to be done every year. So it's hours upon hours of making sure the students are on and they're taking part in the computer led as well as the in-person work that has to be done.
Any other questions for Dawn? Okay. Thank you, Dawn, for all of your hard work and that of your staff. We appreciate it. And certainly don't hesitate to reach out to the board if you're looking for assistance or anything that the board may be able to assist with.
Great, thank you.
Okay, moving on, new business. Next is Google Doc usage. A suggestion that Charles had made.
So I would just throw, I would just throw it out there. You have been using Dropbox. I'm not sure for how long.
A long
It got a
time.
little complicated only because the Dropbox was something that I think Philip had put on his credit card. So we had to figure out a little bit, and he kind of gave it over to us. So it's a little different, but I thought I would just throw it up. I mean, if everybody in here loves Dropbox and it's something that nobody wants to give up, that I certainly could get behind and support that. But we are a Google district. We have tremendous capacity with Google, and especially after our experience now with all things Google that we've been doing since the pandemic started, our tech support and our ability to use Google is really on point, whereas Dropbox is something that isn't being used anywhere else in the organization except for you folks. So I just thought I would throw out there and entertain some feedback about how comfortable you would be if I worked with Meg and started beginning to migrate or transition us out of Dropbox and into Google.
Let's do it.
Please. I
Yes,
personally
please.
can't stand Dropbox and would fully support a move to Google Docs.
I think that what's confusing about Dropbox right now is that there probably is about 8 or 10 years worth of documents that are available. So it's not as easy to navigate because there's so much there. But Google Docs would be fine. But my recommendation would be to wait until the end of this school year so that all of 2021 is intact one place. I don't know that we would migrate all the documents over to Google Docs. So we'd have to think about where the repository of all the other documents would be, and it would be a gargantuan task. So I don't have a problem. And I think that there should be definitely some training for Google Docs, because although it seems intuitive, sometimes it's not, and it can be very confusing as well. So
Right.
training
Well,
and
that-
wait until
that's
June.
again, if people are comfortable with it, I would work with Meg and certainly bring Holly and Elliot and some of our Google wizards into this. And I'm actually pretty good at Google too now. I've become quite adept. We would certainly provide the training, and it would be a process to transition. It's not something we would start right away, but I would put together a transition plan that would start, in 2021 and move us over the course of the spring, so that, if I had an event horizon, I'd say sometime around the end of this year, we would have Dropbox be a sort of legacy and move forward more aggressively with Google. And it's not just Google Docs, it's all things Google Drive, Google Folders. We can provide the training to those of you who need it, and it really is a far more user-friendly and easy to navigate platform, in my opinion.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I
I would be
agree.
fine with that.
It-
Dropbox has gotten easier for me because I can use it. Somehow my file folder, file manager program, it's right in my files, so it's really easy to get to that way. But if you use the Dropbox app, it's terrible.
I agree.
Nice thing about the Google is it's all managed through your Google Gmail, and it's all right there. So you're not going to Gmail to get one thing and then going over to Dropbox for files and stuff. It's all integrated into one place that's linked right to your email. You could
Right.
even, if you got into it, connect to Google Calendar, and boy, there's just no end. I mean, it really is pretty impressive. It's taken over. I mean, I think it's.
Charles, since we're
Yeah, and I really don't think we need 10 years worth of documents to be accessible. I think, a year's worth that we could see at some point in time. So there's just a lot of documents there that are ancient history, basically.
Well, yeah, but I would just want to make the point that I think we do want those archives there. It's not a big, difficult task to move
Yeah.
those documents and include them, like you said, Charles, in a Google Drive. It's searchable, everything's in there, like they already exist.
True.
It's not like we're going to have to scan them in and create
Right.
them. There they are.
These
And
are
every now
things
and then
that,
yeah, I'm sorry, go
What's
ahead.
that?
But it'll be, have you ever uploaded a file? It takes
Yeah,
hours, so
all the
it'll
time.
be,
No,
well, it'll be.
maybe
but
on a
it'll be
1440
fine.
modem it does, but
okay,
Yeah.
this is a 40,000
no,
foot
I know.
question, not minutia at this point in time.
So,
The only question I have is regarding security, because there are certain
Well, yeah.
documents shared with the board in executive session, personnel documents, contract negotiations, those types of things. I'm personally not familiar at all with Google Docs. I don't use it in any other aspect of my life except for things that I've done with the Board of Ed. So that would be my concern. I don't really understand how the shared drives work and all that. As long as we can be sure that what needs to be kept secure and confidential is kept that way, I don't have any issue with being instructed on how to use a new platform. And I'm,
Yes, definitely. I mean, the Google platform would be really no more or less secure than Dropbox. Frankly, I think it would be a little bit more secure because it's easier to track who's sharing documents and how they're being accessed and used than Dropbox. That's my experience. I mean, you can quickly check the history and log and see if somebody shared a document that they shouldn't have. It adds a level of accountability. Not that I think anybody would, but
and there's a
I
way to
don't
limit
know those
access.
capacities as well with Dropbox. Right.
And there's a way to limit
Right.
access
We
too.
can limit access for
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Are we comfortable with this? Should we take a vote?
Yeah, if we
Okay,
need a motion,
Yeah.
I make a motion that we move from Dropbox to Google.
there's a second?
Second that.
Okay, Chris Darby. Any further discussion?
just that maybe that we could amend the motion to say that because I think what we want is to him to fully explore it and bring it back to us and give us an update towards that outcome and not necessarily just do it. Is that?
I mean, it sounds to me like it's going to be a process, and that right now we're agreeing to start this process. It's not about necessarily coming back. It's like,
yeah, why don't you authorize me to begin the process, and then I will make it I'll invite all of Meg and everybody to contribute their ideas. I really just wanted to start today with a vision for a move from Dropbox to Google, and then I'll now take that vision and bring it forward with some actionable steps, both short-term and long-term, to begin to move us in that direction.
Great.
That's
So
what
if the motion wanted to reflect.
So amend the motion. So someone has to amend the motion.
I would just recommend that we amend the motion to reflect what Charles' sentiment to explore this, develop it, tickle out the details, and then bring it back to us and say when it's going to be actionable.
Okay, so you want to amend it to say the reflect to explore and develop the migration from Dropbox to Google Docs over the next few months.
There's a second.
I'll second. Well, can't do that.
I can second the amendment.
Great.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Great. All right, the next thing on the agenda is the task force on solidarity and the board selecting a liaison. Included in the documents on Dropbox is the resolution passed by the Board of Selectmen back in August and revised in September, creating this task force. And Susan Bransfield has reached out and asked that the board select a liaison to connect with the task force and keep the Board of Education up to date on what's going on, and work with the task force to carry out its mission as indicated in that resolution. So are there any members of the Board of Education who would like to serve in that capacity?
Can I ask a question about this first? Because I'm clear on what the town task force is, and now now we also have our own effort underway with our equity committee, our equity task force for the schools, and I'm curious about how these two groups are intended to interface, and whether it makes sense to have whoever the representative is. I'm just curious. I'm curious about whether this is whether these are separate things, or whether we should be treating them as related.
They're separate, I would say.
No, I mean, they're related too, but they are separate.
Right. And, I think that the liaison would be like the liaison to the Board of Selectmen, in my mind anyway, is how I'm picturing it, to report to the Board of Education as to any activities that task force is participating in that maybe are the district's similar group may want to partner with or work on together. That's my understanding anyway.
I would think, wouldn't we also ask that group to send somebody to our task group as a representative as well? As a kind
Well,
of
it's not a Board of Ed.
ambassador?
The group
Not a
that,
Board of Ed meeting, but just
No.
the task group.
that's Charles, the district is doing that. That's not a Board of Education
Right.
committee. So that would be up to Charles and the district, whoever is,
We, the board, can't ask him to do that? Is it? Just trying
Charles,
to understand the parameters here we're working in.
well, what we're working on tonight is the resolution for the Task Force on Solidarity that the Board of Selectmen created.
Right, but
Well, we're
because,
just,
because they have I'm only pushing it because one of their stated goals is to work with the Board of Education, and I feel like we have approved the formation of an equity task force that is, I think, looking to do related work within our school district, and that if this group is looking to work with the Board of Education, I just want to make sure that we're creating any connections that we need to create so that both groups can be successful.
Well, I would think that's why we would want a liaison
I think
and
that
wouldn't
the
it be the same
liaison-
person?
with that. I
That's
mean,
what I was wondering about, Tim.
Like if our board is, I think we were gonna have board members, Charles was gonna invite a board member to his committee. Wouldn't that same board member being, making a double commitment to attend as liaison for the other group would be a good connection? That would kind of bring things full circle, right?
I don't know at this point, because I don't believe that we've heard from Charles where the group is that the district is forming is in its creation.
Well, Charles, do you have any thoughts on like what your vision would be for how our group is working with the town group, or any thoughts?
I think you're right on. These are going to be two different groups, and I think our group is largely going to be focused on the work of the schools, right? I mean, that's sort of where I think we can have the maximum influence and do the best work is a focus on the schools. Now, to the extent that we should be aware of and aligning our efforts with this task force, I think that's a great idea. So we just did the interviews last week, and yesterday we selected the two equity coordinators. And I can't remember what's today. Today's Tuesday. I think Thursday this week. It may be Friday. I have to go look at my calendar. Eric and I are meeting with the two new equity coordinators and getting our act together, right? And the first step of that is going to be to set some short-term goals for our work and then develop a larger committee of representative individuals, students, parents, community stakeholders, and hopefully a board member would be on that committee with us so that we can start this work. And that work is really going to begin in earnest, I would say, as early as this next week, right? We want to start inviting people to participate. Would it be a nice touch to have the individual on our equity task force also liaisoning with the town task force? Would that increase collaboration and communication between the two groups? Certainly. I think that could be, if somebody's interested in doing that, but does it have to be the same person? Is it like, would a board member be appropriate on our equity task force and then a different board member liaisoning with this group from the town? I think that would be fine too. I mean, certainly we can always just talk. I mean, would it make more practical and logistical sense that it's the same person who's on our task force and also the liaison with the town task force? Sure, that makes a lot of sense to me too.
I think it may be, at this point in time, something to keep in mind. If the person who would like to be, I mean, the question for tonight is there someone interested in being the liaison to the town's solidarity task force? And at the point in time when the district's group is ready to reach out for members, if that same person wants to serve in that capacity, we can discuss that as well. If someone else would like to, then we can discuss that too.
Yeah, well, if nobody else wants to do it,
Makes
I'd be
sense.
on the task. I'd be willing to be that.
Okay.
the
Anybody
liaison?
else?
To be the liaison, Tim, to
Yeah,
the
I mean, you
town?
need someone to go to the meetings and participate in that group.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Not hearing any other.
At our January board meeting, Eric and I will update you on
Good.
the work of the Portland Public Schools Equity Group. And then at that point, maybe somebody else or Tim, you would be interested in serving in that capacity as well. But let's wait till January when we have a clearer sense of where we're headed.
All righty. I will let Mrs. Bransfield know, Tim, that you will be the liaison, and I would anticipate that you would be added to the email list for that group going forward, and we'll add it to our liaison reports on our agendas.
Oh, I hadn't planned on that.
Well,
No,
now
I'm
you
kidding.
can.
That's-
All right. Next is old business. I don't see that we have any old business listed. Committee reports, curriculum.
Unfortunately, the last meeting was canceled and we are meeting again next week.
Okay. Policy.
Policy is going to meet sometime in January. We are still going to be discussing communication plan and social media and the use of social media.
Okay.
And no date, no firm date at this point.
Okay. Personnel, we're moving forward as Charles indicated in his email to the board. Working on some contract negotiations, and hopefully we'll have some information to report in an executive session in the near future. Building and grounds.
Before I came tonight, just before you leave that one, I spoke with Rebecca this afternoon before the board meeting. She's likely going to be ready to meet with the personnel committee and update us on those discussions next week.
Great. So we will watch for an email to get that subcommittee meeting set up. Anything from building and grounds?
Nothing except that I think the next step in the building and grounds whole thing is to get a task force together, identify a board of selectmen person. And I don't know where we are with that, Charles. Have we had any conversations with Mrs. Bransfield?
Yep, that is on my list of things to talk to her tomorrow about. We have one person who has already committed. I'm waiting to hear from her about the second and third person who
Right.
would be hopefully willing to commit to that endeavor. So stay,
Okay,
stay
and that's
tuned.
where we're at. Yep. Okay, great.
There'd be 3 Board of Selectmen members on that?
This 2 Board of Selectmen, and then this is another community member
another
with a
community, yeah.
certain expertise and experience in this area. Somebody you'll
Yeah.
probably recognize the name of from past projects like this.
Right.
Okay, so we'll hear more about that probably in January, I would assume, Charles. Okay. Conservation and Renewable Task Force.
Nothing at the moment.
Okay. CREC liaison.
Nothing at the moment. Everything quiet. They're dealing with COVID and closings and money issues.
They
Board of
had a
Selectmen.
death of a vice principal too in
They did. Oh, they did. That was horrible
yeah,
the
that
other
was
day.
terrible.
Yeah, in a car, not bicycle accident or an accident.
Board of Selectmen, Dave.
Nothing significant. It was actually a very short meeting. I know they did, Jim Tripp did give an update because him and Ralph are usually on these calls to give an update to the Board of Selectmen on the school situation. So it was just something to note that it is being shared from this meeting with the community.
Good. Anything from our liaison to the Task Force for Solidarity? That was a joke.
Yes,
We'll table that to next time.
there's a new liaison that's been appointed by the board to be part of that.
Great, great. All right. Any comments from the audience or citizens?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes.
Mhm.
We need your name and
Hi.
address, please.
Yep, absolutely. I'm Diane Lopez, 22 Old Carriage Road.
Good evening.
Hi, I have one child in distance learning and one receiving services at PHS. I first and foremost want to speak highly enough of our son in person for his services at Portland High School. It makes a world of difference for him to have a routine, consistency, and his one-on-one instruction. Given the research that schools are transmitting the virus, I would recommend that students return in full on December 15th. Students have more success in an environment where they have that personal connection with teachers and have a structure and accountability that a school environment provides. We know our teachers are doing a stellar, excellent job in distance learning, and it is a huge improvement over the spring. However, we're still not providing our students with an optimal education within the current safety guidelines. Given the research supporting that schools are safe, I highly recommend that students return in person as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Not at this time.
Thank you. All right. Any Board of Education comments?
I attended the delegate assembly on the 19th of November. It was quite a learning experience. It's where CABE develops their legislative agenda for the year. And I learned a lot. It was a good learning opportunity to find out how the legislative agenda is developed from the government committee at CABE to the Board of Eds. And we obviously missed the timeline this year, but next year we're attuned to it if we have any issues that we want to take on a pursue. There were 2 issues that came up. One of them is about establishing curriculum for K-12. A school system, probably a small school system that doesn't have a lot of curriculum writing money, wanted the State Department of Education as curriculum for all K-12 schools. And that was rejected wholeheartedly. Number one, because it could be an unfunded mandate going forward. And secondly, with the autonomy of the individual school districts and Board of Eds to determine if they have a health curriculum of they're developing the Black Studies, African American Studies curriculum, which would be a recommended curriculum that boards could take a look at and add to or not use. The other resolution that came up was to develop a model for grading, which was not based on the 900 hours instructional time or seat time, otherwise known as the Carnegie method, which means that kids are graded for the amount of time they are in school. It doesn't mean that they've acquired any skills. And so that passed pretty heartily. It's an equitable way to grade based on mastery and not on whether or not a kid was in school and was a face at a desk. And those two things came up. The rest of it was a lot of just elaborating on what 21st century skills look like and to include equity and diversity curriculum. It went very smoothly, and it was much faster than in person where they usually go on for 2 or 3 hours, done in about 45 minutes. And it was done via Zoom. So it was a good learning experience for me. And as I said, going forward, we'll be a little bit more aware of what's actually being proposed to the state legislature. So it was a good opportunity.
Great.
And that's all I
Any-
have to report.
Okay, any other
That's it.
comments? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Tim made the motion. Meg, is that a second?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay. it's
8:39.
unanimous. Thank you all.
All right.
We will
Thank you.
see you next week at our special meeting.
Yes. That's at 7 o'clock, correct?
7
I
o'clock.
believe
Yep.
so. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everyone.